We're going to see an example for the head group management tools based on the design you can see here on the screen, which I had prepared, and it consists on a scallop at the top, a corner element on the right and a corner element on the left, as well as some details or elements in the middle, and on the right hand side and on the left hand side we have individual elements as well. In order to start the head group management tools, I go to File, New File, and in the appearing window I go and select Head Grouping Project. On the appearing window, the first thing I do is I choose the machine model I'm going to use, which is in my case a TMAR BF. Then I select the amount of heads the machine has, the frame drive, which is W in my example, as well as the grouping. So I want to control individual heads. That's why I choose individual. And at the end, I also select the embroidery area for the width, 330 millimeters, and the height, which is 450 millimeters. This will launch a new window, as you can see, with the name Head Group 1, where we have a preview of all the 12 heads at the top, and then we have a cycle. First cycle, which you can see here, a little window that will show the preview of the design element with we have 4 functions: first load, then position, manual, and edit. So let's load our first design element. I will choose the PXF file that I have prepared for the scallops, which is here, the border, and once we have selected it, it will show up in the little preview window there. As you can see, the next step is I will switch on the individual heads. I want this scallops to be embroidered, and that's going to be head 2 until head 11. Head 1 and head 12 will be inactive for the feston. Then we launch the design itself, the little scallops, because I would like to position them properly. In order to do so, you see there's a preview of the embroidery area of the head I'm going to use. So I select the scallops, all the segments, and position them at the top of the preview grid, aligning the left hand side exactly to that's the limit of the head, left side. And I zoom it in real big so I can work with precision. What I did here is I changed to needle number 6, which has this color, and as a next step I will draw a rectangle around the scallop area, which will help me for positioning reasons. So once I have that, I select all of the segments and I copy them into the clipboard. Once I have that, I can delete the rectangle and save my file. Once it's saved, you see it's going to show up in the position which we chose. Then I'm going to create the next cycle, number 2, and load the next element for it, which is going to be the corner on the right hand side. Again, it's going to show that particular element on the preview. I'm going to embroider that one with head number 1. Click on the edit button in order to position this part or this element properly. So we zoom out and you can see a preview again of the embroidery area of the head we're using, in this case head number 1. I paste the scallops which I had copied before, and we're going to move them to the head which is on the left hand side of head 1. In this case that is the embroidery area of head number 2. zooming in really big so I can position the scallops and the rectangle exactly where they are intended to be, or they are positioned. And you see, that's why I created the rectangle, so I can see where the limit is on the top. Then we are going to choose all the segments belonging to the corner design and move it to the head number 1 embroidery area side so that it aligns properly with the scallop, with the beginning of the scallop. I zoom in really big so I can do it with precision. Well, that looks good to me. And once we're done with it, we can delete the rectangle and the scallops. So what I did here is I copy and paste the that part again for the next cycle, save it, and we can see the corner is positioned exactly where I wanted it to be. So it's good to save our projects routinely. That's going to be an HGPROJ5 extension. We save it. So now we have our project safe, at least until this step, cycle number 2. We're going to create the next cycle, number 3, because we need to add now the corner on the left-hand side. So we go to load, and we are loading the element, which is the corner on the left PXF file. Again, it will show up in the preview, and we're going to embroider that element with head number 11. So the W drive allows you to embroider into the embroidery area of the next head, so that's why I chose 11. And we click on edit, so we can position now the corner on the left hand side. So I paste the scallops again, because we need to position them on top and on the right hand side. So on the right hand side, so that we can move the corner part, and zoom in again in order to position it exactly where we want it to be. Okay, this looks good. Once we're done with that, we delete the parts that we don't need, and with Ctrl S we save that cycle. So this was cycle number 3. You can see embroidered with head number 11, but in the area of embroidery area of head 12 in the correct position. We're going to create a new cycle again. What we'll do now is we load the little element that is on the left hand side below the corner element. There it is. So we would like to position it properly. In order to be able to position it in the correct area, we load the corner, the left corner again, and we select it. We also draw a rectangle, so the rectangle with the rectangle tool, you see, serves me as a guide for the positioning. So then I select both of them, or all of these segments, copy them into the clipboard, and then we load the little detail on the left. As we launch the preview again, a new tab with the preview, I'm going to paste what I had just copied to the clipboard before. We can now position that, well, it's already in the right position, as you can see. So now we only need to select the element on the left hand side, all the segments belonging to that part, and we will move it to the location that we want it to be. We can also use the help of the ruler, so place a guideline so we can align it properly. Then I'm going to take the existing rectangle there, drag it down, and this will serve me. Copy all those parts into the clipboard, because they're going to serve me as a good guideline for the other element, which is going to be on the right hand side. Once I've done that, I delete all the parts that are not needed. We change the color of the needle of that particular detail to needle number 6. I want this to be embroidered in the same color like the corner elements and the scallops. And once we have that, we Control S, we save it. This is going to refresh the preview, and you're going to see, you see it's going to be embroidered with head 11 in the correct position. We will now add the little element on the right hand corner, creating a new cycle. So for this we select the cycle number 2, which is the corner on the right hand side. We can now draw a rectangle again. Which will serve me as a guideline. And then we select all of the elements, all of the segments, and copy them to the clipboard. And once we're done with that, we can get rid of cycle number 2 without saving it, of course. Okay, we create our cycle number 5, load the little file, which is the element on the right hand side. It is loaded and shows up here. We're going to embroider that with head number 1, then click on the edit button. This will launch that particular design element to a new tab. Let's zoom in. We see the preview again of the embroidery area of head number 1. Then paste what we had copied in the clipboard just before. And you can see the position is of that right hand corner element with the rectangle that I draw is very good, because I can position everything now to the desired location. Change to needle number 6, and once that is done, we can now delete the parts that we don't need. Okay, so you see I'm going to move that a little bit more to the inside so it aligns to my guideline there. Looks good. Once we're done with it, Control S to save it, and we are done with our cycle number 5. We're going now to create the center elements. I'm going to add cycle, which is cycle number 6. Load the center element file, curtain center element. This will launch it, and you see it in the preview there. So for the center element, we will have them stitched or embroidered with head number 2 until head number 11. So each one of those individual heads, I'm going to check mark them. As you can see on the preview on the top, we have them in a preview. Now the position itself for these elements, I want them to be positioned more or less like the top part of the element to reach the middle of the corner element. That's why I'm going to launch or select the corner element cycle number 2. I'm going to edit it. For the purpose of having the position, the exact position of that corner element, I'm going to draw a rectangle shape around it, as I had already mentioned many times before. This is for positioning purposes. So let's draw it right at the top and the rectangle. Then I'm going to select all those segments and copy them in the clipboard. Once we have done that, we can close the tab, of course without saving the changes. Once we have the parts copied in the clipboard, we can now edit the cycle number 6 and start our work with positioning that element in the correct position, in the intended position. So we see a preview again of, in this case, is head number 1 and head number 2. We're going to paste the corner element with the rectangle that I drew and place them, move them a little bit to the right hand side, move it out of the way, but you see in the height, in the correct position, so that I see where the corner element is located. And I'm going to select the center piece, center element, and move it exactly between the embroidery area of one head and the next head. Then we are going to draw a guideline, dragging a horizontal guide in the middle, and that gives me a good idea where the center of the corner is. So I'm going to move the center element around in that area. It looks good. And once we have the position in place, we can delete the corner and element and the rectangle. We are going to have a look. We saved it, of course, and we're going to have a look how the position looks good. Once we are happy with that, we can close the tab and we are done with the cycle number 6. For cycle number 7, we are going to go to cycle number 6 and copy the element from that cycle, which is this one. Select all of the segments, copy it to the clipboard. Once it's copied, we close that cycle number 6 and we edit cycle number 7. Click on the edit button. This will launch that cycle 7 as a new tab, and we paste the segments that we just copied in the clipboard. Now this is the one element that I'm going to position embroidered by head number 2 and place it to the most right hand side, so basically where the area of head number 1 is starting. So I'm going to create those guidelines by dragging from the ruler the guidelines in order to keep the same height of the position there, and then we will reflect with the reflect tool those segments. The result is a reflection in the vertical. Once that is done, we Control S, we save it. We are going to have a look how this shows up when we click or check mark head number 2. So we see on the top it's right there. That's the intention I wanted to have. I wanted to have it flipped or reflected next to the corner, the right hand corner. So we are done there and we save it. We are coming to the last part of our design. I will create a cycle number 8 and have those center elements with an offset basically in the middle of the embroidery area of a head, and offset by 50% with a reflection, so that, in my opinion, that would look like a nice distribution and completing the image or the design nicely. To do so, we will go to cycle number 6, click on the edit button, and the purpose of this is we're going to copy that element. Therefore, we select all of the segments, Control copy, Control C, so it goes in the clipboard. We can close cycle number 6. We select cycle 8, go click on the edit button to launch that cycle into a new tab. Once it shows up, we paste what we just copied from the clipboard right in there. Now what I would like to do here is I would like to place a couple of guidelines, dragging them from the horizontal ruler, in order for me to have an idea where I'm going to position them. Once I have that, we also find out the center of the embroidery area. A good way to find out is we drag a rectangle box in the limits of those 330 millimeters. This will give us a rectangle with, you see those little squares, and that's where I place a vertical guideline from the ruler. Now we can get rid of the rectangle. We select all of the segments from those center element and place it right there in the center, embroidery field center. And I'm also going to position it, in this case it's a 50% and it's in the middle. So once we have done that, we will reflect it in order to have a nice distribution of that element, and we Control save it. Let's have a look how this looks on our preview. We'll have that cycle number 8. We want all of the embroidery heads from 2 to 11 to have them embroidered. So you start to see how it looks like on the preview window. Okay, we have all 11 heads embroidering them. To me it looks a little bit congested, so I would place them a little bit further down in order to have a better distribution, so it doesn't look as congested as we saw that. So let's select that element and move it down. You see where the leaves are basically touching the guideline, which I place, Control save, and we're going to have a look how this change looks like. Yes, this looks much better. Now we can close cycle 8, and this is the conclusion of this design. We have a nice curtain element, as you can see here.